All right. Thank you, Jim Cooper, Sheriff for Sacramento County. Thank you for coming in today. Appreciate it. You've had a very unique background. Thank you for doing this. You've been around the block, let's just say. You've seen a lot of things, experienced a lot of things, been a public safety, been in public safety for about 30 years.
32, this is my 32nd year.
32nd year.
Yes.
In addition to that, you've served in the state legislature, and you were Elk Grove. I think you're a founding member of Elk Grove.
First mayor of Elk Grove, and spent 15 years on the city council.
Wow. So
yeah, a long time.
A little bit about Elk Grove. I live in that area, and there was the sheriff that actually used to patrol that area.
Yes.
And then I think you had a really big involvement in creating their actual police department. Is that correct?
Yeah. What was weird is, like, Sacramento County, they had 3 cities incorporate in the span of 10 years, unheard of in California.
Right.
And that was Citrus Heights, Elk Grove, and Rancho Cordova.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we still provide the contract services for Rancho Cordova.
Still today?
Yes.
And, I was talking to your IPO, or Informational Public Officer.
Right.
And he was telling me, because I was trying to find a map that basically shows the jurisdiction of what the actual sheriff's department actually cover. It's kind of hard. It's really convoluted. I think you guys it's very convoluted to figure out what you guys actually cover at all, in terms of, I understand unincorporated area, but I feel like you guys really work with the city, police department, and just everyone in kind of tandem.
And we do. And Sacramento County is almost 800 square miles. It is a big county. It's a suburban county. A lot of Northern California counties are rural, where we're suburban. And besides doing the patrol stuff and detective stuff, investigations, we're tasked with maintaining the jail. So anyone that's arrested in Sacramento County gets booked in our jails. We're in the court systems, register sex offenders, work release program. So by constitution, there's a lot more the sheriffs do than just your regular police departments.
I have a 3-part question for you, and I always kind of ask leaders this question, and it's a big question. And basically, what it is what keeps you up at night locally?
Gun violence, human trafficking. I worry about my men and women. When I first started, I went to briefings and told them I don't want to bury anybody during my time here. I've been to enough funerals. So we provide training for the officers, de-escalation. We want to have a good outcome for the citizens and for our officers. And that's really my goal, is to not have to take a life and to really work through those things. There's a lot of moving parts to it. It's interesting because law enforcement is called when things are going bad, not because things are going good. It's a difficult job. It's a tough job. And I think in some aspects, politicians and the media have made our job a lot tougher.
I'd have to agree with that. I mean, this whole notion of defund the police, or, we're not supporting the police. I find that ludicrous. I mean, who do you call when you're actually in trouble? You call the police.
Yeah, that was a dumbass idea.
Yeah. You call the cops, right? I mean,
yes.
Unfortunately, this whole defunding thing is just kind of unfortunate,
And that's
that
gone,
scenario.
It's gone by the wayside.
Yeah, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
On a state level, what are you actually worried about? What kind of keeps you up at night on a state level?
Well, funding, some of the laws, and we've been fighting with that. I fought in the legislature. What we're dealing with now is the human trafficking laws. So back in 2016, they decriminalized childhood prostitution. So if you're under the age of 18, it is not against the law to be a prostitute. So we're seeing the human traffickers that are targeting these young girls because they know it's not a crime. Our folks ran into a girl last night that was being human trafficked, 14 years old, and she wanted nothing to do with us. And legally, we had no reason to stop her or detain her. So she just basically told us to get lost and walked away. And that is troubling because there are 14-year-old girls, even 12-year-old girls, that are really influenced by these traffickers through force, through fear, through drugs. So a lot happens, and that really ties our hands.
Right. Repeat that again. I found that interesting, and I just kind of slipped by it. So if you're under 18, you don't have any jurisdiction under them? Or?
It's not a law. They decriminalized it.
Or they decriminalized it?
Yeah, so it's not a crime, which is mind-boggling. And then in 2020, they made it where you can't Mirandize a kid under 17, a juvenile. Basically, if you want to interview a juvenile, you have to have their lawyer there. And then also they decriminalized in 21 lording for the purposes of prostitution. So what that did is the way they dressed. Like, for instance, someone had a purse full of condoms.
Right.
That was one of the factors that we weighed in if someone was out there lording for the purposes. But more importantly, the dress. So if you go out on the places where the prostitution takes place, you will see these young girls as young as 12 years old in just sometimes their bra and panties, sometimes just fishnet stockings, nothing on top, but they're pretty much nude. And that law did that. So our state legislature voted for that bill.
That's one of the perspectives I wanted to ask you about, being the sheriff now and being in the state legislature and having that perspective from that perspective, right?
Right.
Now that you're the sheriff, is that almost deflating? Is that like kind of when the state legislature passes things of that nature, as the sheriff, do you find that like kind of a morale beater, even for your rank and file members? It would seem like, hey, we're doing our best to try to kill crime, cut crime, do the very best, but then our government is just kind of working against us.
Well, it makes it tough, and it's I wouldn't say deflating sometimes, but it's just there's only so much you can do. So I deal with what I can do and take care of that, and I really don't look back on other things. You have to have that mindset, otherwise you can't get your job done.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
How was it in the state legislature when these bills would come across your table or, cross you, and you would see like, oh, this is just ludicrous,
I would stand up on the floor and talk smack.
Oh, really?
About these bills, yeah.
Okay.
And I'll tell you on the decriminalization for loitering, I talked about it. I said, hey, if someone's out in a known prostitution area, the known stroll, and they're wearing this, I mean, you've worked it long enough where you develop an expertise, and that's why. And it was interesting. I had a colleague stand up and said, it shouldn't be the way a woman's dressed, and that's got nothing to do with it. It's these traffickers make these girls wear that. And it's these folks really don't know it. It's a disconnect.
Right.
They're passing these laws, but yet they have no information about it. And that's the issue. That's the rub there.
It makes sense. They're just kind of legislating from inside the Capitol, and they just have no perspective on some of the things that are going on the street, let's just say.
Well, and special interests too, mind you. They're out there every day beating the drum, trying to get things passed. And basically, if they had their way, there'd be no accountability. I'm talking about the advocates in California. They want no one going to jail, no one being held accountable for anything.
Boy, that special interest groups, like they call them the third house, basically. I mean, is it something that is really just powerful in our state, where they're actually making that much of a difference?
They are very powerful.
Okay, that's almost deflating.
Yeah.
Reason I have you here today is really to talk about Prop 47 and the effects that it's had on Sacramento County and statewide. And I just kind of wanted to get your perspective on Prop 47. And if you can give a brief description of what it is,
Sure.
That'd be great.
Well, the voters voted for it.
Right.
So you voters, they're listening right now, you voted for this in 2014. And Prop 47 was called the Safe Streets and Schools Initiative. It had nothing to do with that. They talked about getting low-level offenders out of jails. And everyone's kind of like, yeah, that's not a bad idea. What it did, it took 7 crimes, drug and theft crimes, and made them misdemeanors. And that's the crux of the issue right now. So just really 7 crimes, drug and theft crimes. So they kicked up before it was $250 or more was a felony, and they took it to $950.
I think that's what most people know it as, is $950 prop.
So as long as you stay, the way the law was written, it was written very specifically.
Right.
So as long as you stay below $950, it is just a citation. You will not go to jail all day, every day. And you cannot aggregate or combine theft. So obviously if you did it at 2 stores and you passed that $950 threshold, you would think that'd be enough to arrest someone for a felony. But the way the authors crafted that law, you can't aggregate theft or combine it. So you can go in and do that 20 or 30 times a day and not go to jail. They were very smart in that and very deliberate in that. And that's been the big issue. Then you have appellate court rulings that ruled on this. The $950 applies to a car. So if you have a car that's less than $950, it's not a felony, it's a misdemeanor. Car theft's always been a felony. Who's driving a car valued at less than $950? Somebody poor, an immigrant who really needs that car, it impacts them. So it covers a lot of things. And I think what got lost is the voters voted for this, the DNA law before. So if you're arrested for a felony in California, when you're booked in jail, they swab your cheek for DNA. So a lot of our cold case hits for murders, for sexual assaults, rapes, things like that, we've gotten a tremendous number of hits over the years. And since 2014, because those crimes are misdemeanors, our hits have dropped by about 6,000 or 7,000. But what was interesting, there were studies, and I ran a bill in the legislature, studies in 10 states in the U.S. and the U.K. that talked about these cold case hits. When they got a cold case hit and solved it, that hit came from somebody being arrested for drugs or theft. So seriously, so that's what happens. I was in the legislature, I ran a bill to overchange that to allow us to get DNA again. These two girls in Yuba City, they were both 12 and 13, Adaraberries. They were cousins. They were shot in the back of the head, raped and sodomized. 44 years later, they got a DNA hit for drugs.
That's fantastic.
And they ended up arresting 2 individuals, and they're in prison now. But since 2014, those cases don't happen anymore. Which is, you have scientific data that talks about it, and we know. So that's the issue. So so I'm in the legislature. I'm trying to run bills and kind of fix the DNA part, trying to fix the theft part on Prop 47. Can't get my bill heard in public safety. So I'm like, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to raise money and put my own initiative on the ballot. So I start raising money, and because you have to raise money to gather signatures.
Correct.
So I raised $2 million, and we gather signatures, and so it's going to go to the ballot. So I start raising money. A lot of law enforcement unions give money, and other organizations, some businesses gave money. But and you think about this, all the big retailers were getting hit: Target, Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot, Best Buy. And you would think, okay, they're going to put money in because they're getting the losses and stuff. Not one of them put any money towards the initiative that really impacted them. But you know who gave money against it? Mark Zuckerberg, the owner of Netflix. His wife gave money, and a lot of other folks gave money against the initiative. So we got our butts kicked because we were outspent. Now, mind you, if that was on the ballot today, it would win overwhelmingly. So that is back on the ballot this year. They raised, but it cost $9 million because it's based on voter turnout. So voter turnout's gone up substantially. So that's why it's more money for signature gathering. And
we're in a presidential election year too.
Yeah, so you're gonna have high voter turnout. So the big thing is you have to have a robust campaign, probably $20 million. Now you're gonna have the unions that are gonna come out and be against it, which doesn't make any sense because this impacts their members. Because the new norm is what you go in and everything's locked up. I got to push that button just to get some soap or shampoo. That is asinine that we have to deal with that. And I think the public's fed up. So, having been involved in this job for 32 years in law enforcement, I really see a changing. I see a shift in the scales, but I don't know how much of that shift there is.
One of the things that I read, it was your kind of feedback on Target. And if you don't mind me, if you want to expand on that incident,
Yeah.
I thought that was asinine. And I don't really understand it, but maybe you can give it from their perspective.
Well, the retailers they're concerned about their image. And that's the number one thing.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but you would think that they would support you guys in any fashion.
They should. And obviously, since then, we've come to a agreement, so we've got a good relationship with Target now. So I'm not going to bash anybody today, but yeah. But some of those big box retailers didn't want us in there. They weren't reporting it because here's one thing that the opponents say. They always say, crime is down. The numbers aren't there. Well, yeah, it's down because the retailers don't report the theft. Mm-hmm. No one's reporting stuff. The car smash and grabs in San Francisco, nobody reports it. So if people aren't reporting, hell yeah, it's down. So it's important in this battle and fight. It's about stats and about numbers. So we had some problems with some retailers here in Sacramento that didn't want us in their stores. So we went there anyways. And here's what frustrates me. In about a week, we arrested 300 people that were shoplifting from stores that your listeners shop at. So out of that 300 people, about 270 got citations because it was less than 950. Only 12 were homeless. So I want to dispel that myth that it's not really the homeless. It's people that are shoplifting out there because they know they won't get in trouble. Somebody walking out with a big screen TV, folks walking out the front door, not running, walking walking out emergency exits.
We've all seen them on TV.
Yeah, they'll come to the self-checkout, scan one item, and walk out with a cart full of items. And that is really what it was. So this law has impacted us. Obviously, costs are up. So we're paying more as consumers. It's impacting us. It's impacting us going into the store and asking someone to open the cabinet to get us, soap or lotion and things like that. So I think the voters are frustrated. They're fed up with it, and they want something to be done.
I had Jeff Reisig on the podcast, and we talked about Prop 47 as well, but he had mentioned something about drug court. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but essentially, you could commit a crime for drugs, and then you'd get the option to go to drug court. Now, it used to be mandatory from my understanding. Now it's not mandatory. So now there's because of the lesser crime, people just aren't showing up to drug court. They're just not showing up to court at all.
Right.
So do you think in terms of the drugs, is that contributing to the homeless? Because there is no consequences to go to jail.
100%. And that's really the big issue. So I spent 10 years in narcotics. For 5 years, I worked undercover and was buying drugs every night. So I've got expertise in that narcotic part.
You personally buying drugs?
I bought a lot of drugs. I probably got over 600 hand-to-hand buys of drugs, from a quarter ounce up to multiple kilos. But that's a different story. But drugs are the hardest thing to get off of. And people, if someone, especially kids, people have gone through rehab maybe 2 or 3 times and never made it to get clean. That is so hard. And with drug court, the judge had a hammer, the carrot and the stick. Hey, I'm going to send you to drug court. If you get yourself clean, we'll expunge your record. But you got to have that hammer on that person to do that. There's no hammer now. So drug court participation in Sacramento County has dropped by over 70%. The only folks that go to drug court now are folks that want to get their records expunged. And you got to have that. And what's crazy, this fentanyl stuff, the legislature doesn't want to do any more laws that add penalties for fentanyl dealers, which is crazy. And every time you find someone that's passed out or unconscious, what does everyone do? Narcan, Narcan, Narcan. I could be having a heart attack. You're going to give me Narcan? BS. Right. It's so prevalent. It's like, oh, hey, and that's the thing. So we have Narcan in the jails. They have Narcan in schools. Is that that's your problem solver?
That's your solution.
Solution is Narcan. That is crazy.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, none.
How do we fix this thing? What actually are you doing personally to actually? Is there a coalition that you support, or is there something that you're actually going to be raising money this year to put on the ballot?
Well, number one, I came out and supported the initiative. It's important to get behind it. I think it's going to pass. It will qualify for sure. And now the voters just have to show up and do their job.
So off camera, we were discussing the name of that initiative. Can you kind of give perspective on what it would actually finally end up being on the ballot?
So the folks that initiated the ballot, the initiative, they put a name on it. But the Attorney General is the one that does the title and summary, what you read in your voter pamphlet, what it is. Like I said, and under Prop 47, it was a Safe Streets and Schools initiative that had nothing to do with that. So it depends on what the AG does. Is he going to give us a good summary or a bad title and summary?
Technology-wise, what are you guys doing as the sheriff's department? Is there anything technology-wise that you guys are implementing to, in the 2024 that is helping you guys out, cut crime, kill crime, work with, the individuals on the street? What are you guys using as technology-wise? Because I'm going off subject here, but a little bit different, but is this whole face recognition real?
It is real. It's a useful tool. And I'll tell you what, technology, because they talk about technology and military equipment, we don't want you guys having that. So every year we have to go before the Board of Supervisors and the Community Review Commission to talk about the tools we're using. They consider drones military equipment. You can buy drones off the shelf. You can buy them anywhere, which is crazy. So we had an incident on Howe Avenue. This guy had shot somebody in an apartment, and the witness ran out and called us. So we show up, and there's the bad guy in the house, a shooter, and another person besides the person who had been shot. So at this point, it's a hostage rescue, basically. So we're ready to go in and storm it, and you don't know you're going to confront that person, but we send a drone in first. And mind you, the SWAT team is there, they're staged, they are ready to go in. The drone flies in and sees the gunman dead and 2 victims dead. that changed our whole operation. So we use those tools that are effective. The armored car to rescue someone. If we've got a barricaded subject shooting, which happens a lot, shooting rounds in the neighborhood, we could pull up in front of your house and take your elderly parent or grandparent into that armored car and transport them away. For the facial recognition, that is used. Obviously, people that have been arrested, we have their pictures on file. And if we commit a crime, we see crimes sometimes where people have closed circuit TV or video footage, and we'll use that and try and match that up. But it's people that have been arrested. The vast majority of people have never been arrested, never been to jail, never had a booking photo. And here's something crazy. It's just you're trying to show people what's going on. We had someone that was a guy that was how do I want to phrase this? He was exposing himself recently, and we put his picture out there. And a lot of departments won't do that. And number one, he was in a position of trust. He worked for CAL FIRE. And number two, he's doing it in public, in front of a woman. Put his picture out there, and lo and behold, there was another victim we found out in a different county. But he's already a 290 registrant, a registered sex offender, and had been convicted prior. So these are some of the things that we're fighting in some of these nutty laws.
What are some of your personal goals in the next 5 years? Personal goals.
The next 5 years.
I do see you working out in the morning. So.
Yeah, I do. Got to go to the gym and work out. Yeah. I got to stay fit mentally and physically.
Yeah.
But I think the big thing is my kids live here. I have a grandson. I want it to be safe for everybody. I want to be transparent in a lot of things we do. Sometimes the laws prevent that. But really, I want the public to feel safe about themselves, to go out. And I want Sacramento to be a great place to live and raise a family. And that's really what it comes down to. And going out there and holding people accountable. If you're a bad guy and you're doing bad things, we're going to take you to jail. We're not playing around. And I am tough on crime. I don't just talk the talk, I walk the walk. And with sheriffs, you have an autonomy. I'm responsible to the voters. If the voters don't like what I'm doing, they're going to vote me out. And, when you have chiefs, there's political influence going on, and there's a lot of...
They're appointed by the city council.
Yeah, and the city manager. So it's helpful to be a sheriff because you have a lot more autonomy. You have autonomy, so that helps.
Accountable to the taxpayers, let's say.
Yeah.
What are some of the main goals for the Sheriff's Department in the next 5 years? What do you see the Sheriff's Department in 5 years from now?
Well, we want to grow. If you need a job, we're hiring. I've got about 106 vacancies for deputy sheriffs, about 100 non-sworn vacancies, civilian jobs. If you have your college degree or some college, you get paid more money. We would love to have you. Number one, you get to help your community and go out there and make a difference, because sometimes you're going to go home and you're going to say, man, that was good. Or someone tells you, hey, thank you so much. So a lot of self-fulfillment out of that and dealing with that. You can do a lot of different things in the Sheriff's Department where you're not stuck behind a desk for 30 years. The pay's pretty good also. And like I said, you're helping your community. You're making a difference. And that fulfillment is better than any award or accolade when you know you've made a difference in someone's life. It's just that gratification. It's like, man, that is so cool. And you can't get that anywhere else.
Closing up here, what can residents of Sacramento County do to support law enforcement and contribute to public safety?
Be involved, be engaged, be our eyes, be our ears, see something, say something. Don't be complicit with this. We've got to take our streets back. That is so important. So we've got a Sheriff's Foundation also.
Okay.
And to raise money for kids, and we want to get them out of gangs and out of narcotics, and then tools for the department. Maybe child abuse needs a camera, we'll buy that. So the Sacramento Sheriff's Foundation, a nonprofit. And we have a rodeo coming up Saturday, July 6th at Dan Russell Arena in Folsom.
So the Sacramento County Foundation is something that the public can support?
Yeah, Sacramento County Sheriff's Foundation.
Sheriff's Foundation.
Yes.
Who do they contact? Is there a website that people can go to?
Just Google Sacramento County Sheriff's Foundation.
I know you're really big with victims and you're big with the youth. Any programs that you support there? In fact, I've got a list, if you don't mind, some of the youth programs. With Law Academy, Sacramento Young Marines, the Youth Leadership Council, Girls Circle, Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers. Big Brothers and Sisters Sheriff's Activities League. Those
Right.
are just some of the programs that you guys support. I think that's fantastic.
Well, it's really about our youth. And online right now, the other day, our deputies chased two 16-year-olds in a vehicle in a pursuit. They had 3 guns in the vehicle, and they finally crashed, and they were live streaming it. And to me, every kid deserves a chance, and that's the issue with our kids. Where are we at as a society? You got to take a test to get a driver's license. There's no test to be a parent. There's some good parents out there, and there's some bad parents out there that don't do their job, that don't raise kids, that don't set boundaries. So to me, it's just, and it troubles me what we're seeing with our youth. Some out there that are doing some of the things they're doing, and that parent role is so important. We go to calls where kids are cursing their parents out, and they're calling us, or they're beating their parent, and they're calling the sheriff's department. It's like, you know what? You're the parent. It's a dictatorship, not a democracy. And parents want to give their kids everything and be their kids' friends. Your job is to be your kids' parent. I was never my kid's friend. I was their parent.
Right.
To look out for their safety and well-being. And so many parents blur that line. So parents, do your job and be a parent.
Boy, that's a whole nother podcast, right? I just want to thank you, Sheriff, for coming in today.
Sure.
I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy. So if people want to get a hold of any of those, what's a good number for your, actually your IPO informational officer?
Right.
It's Amir, right?
Yeah.
And can you just give his contact information, or do you have a website that we can go to, or people can go to contact him?
Sure. SacSheriff.com.
Perfect.
And you can, anything you want, any services, go on there, find it, and you can get it all.
Perfect. Thank you for coming in today,
All right.
Sheriff.
Thank you.
Yep.
Have a great day.
Yep.